Hello everyone, welcome to the show. This is episode 83 of the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, Ben Eagle. Today we're talking flowers with alstroemeria specialist and British Flowers rock campaigner Ben Cross. Before that though, let's dive straight in with a look at some of the news stories from the past week. In the news this week, we learned the frustrating news that rural crime has risen by 9% over the past 12 months, now costing a staggering £54 million. This goes alongside the inevitable anguish that goes with it. Particular targets include machinery, as well as GPS kit, telehandlers and quad bikes. There have also been increases in fly tipping incidents and dog attacks on livestock. There has been amazing news for cheese producers, with consumption increasing a whopping 48% during lockdown, with cheddar the big winner. Check out the latest episode of the Kite Podcast 2020 to hear more about this. The planning system is set to be transformed, with a new development zoning system encouraged to promote growth. According to Housing Secretary Robert Jenrick, land will be placed into three categories: growth, renewal or protection. Land designated for growth will have a permission in principle approach, where new homes, hospitals, schools, shops and offices will be given the green light more easily. Whilst harvest in the east of England is disappointing for some, given the suffering that took place during an exceptionally dry May, yields and quality of early spring malting barley in southern England isn't looking too bad at all. Some fields have shown yields of 7 to 8.5 tonnes per hectare, with nitrogen levels also low for many, which is good news for maltsters and brewers. And that is the news for now. It's now time for Farmer Focus, and today we're heading to West Sussex to talk flowers with Ben Cross.
It's Farmer Focus.
This evening I am speaking to the Jamie Oliver of the British flower industry, putting British flowers on a pedestal and fighting for their future through his British Flowers Rock campaign. Ben Cross is a fourth-generation flower grower at Crosslands Flower Nursery, which was established in 1936 in West Sussex and is one of the last flower nurseries in the UK producing cut flowers in a full colour range all year round. Ben specialises in the British alstroemeria, and Crosslands Nursery have over 50 varieties of the plant. Crosslands used to supply millions of stems per year to supermarkets, and they sent hundreds of boxes of flowers a week to wholesalers at Covent Garden Market. Now they supply less than 100,000 stems to the supermarkets a year and only supply a small amount of boxes a week to wholesalers. But instead, their focus has shifted, and 100 boxes a week go direct to florists, farm shops, and people who are really interested in the provenance of their cut flowers. I should also say that Ben was the first recipient of the Grow Award in 2019. Ben, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on. I don't think we've actually talked about flowers since I spoke to Matt Naylor up in Lincolnshire. That was probably a couple of years ago. So it's really good to have flowers in the spotlight again.
Yeah, I mean, flowers, we always get left behind when it comes to supermarket labelling or NFU, DEFRA sort of things that are going on. We just get left out of everything. Time, so
including farming podcasts, I'm afraid, apparently.
No, I've done quite a few. It's the podcasts have been really, really good, but like in general terms, like in the real world, flowers, it's a £2.2 billion industry. So you've got food, flowers, and way below it is cars, video games, clothes, and so on. Yeah. So it's a big industry just below food in the country, but obviously food and farming, it's had its high profile, Hugh Fernie's, Jamie Oliver's, Jimmy's and all of that, and a lot of TV stuff, and food has got a long way to go, don't get me wrong, but the labelling is better, product placement in supermarkets is better, educating the kids to the older generation is better, buying seasonal, buying local, all of that stuff. But with flowers, we're 20, 30 years behind just in terms of education and awareness to Joe Blogs and the family on the street.
I want to talk about COVID, because I'm really intrigued as to how the cut flower industry has been affected by the pandemic.
Well, I don't know how other people have done, but we've been busier than at Christmas or Mother's Day. I mean, absolutely mental. So there are obviously good things to come out of this. And a lot of good things have happened to us where obviously we supply farm shops. So what do people want to do? Queue up outside Asda for an hour or go into their local farm shop? So more been going to farm shops. So instead of selling 20 bunches a week at the farm shops, we've been selling 100 bunches a week. And then I also collaborated with a local florist in Brighton, and he started doing letterbox flowers.
Okay.
So he did the packing and taking the orders and the money and all that stuff I'm terrible at. And I did the stuff that I was good at, which is the growing and the marketing and getting it out there. And we were doing over 100 letterbox boxes a week. The letterbox thing going, we had the farm shop still going. Our courier, God bless them, was still transporting around the UK. And we were so busy. We didn't throw away a single stem, apart from the first week where we threw away quite a bit because everything was really up and down.
Okay.
But yeah, April, May, and then a bit of June, we've been super busy. It's calmed down back to normal now. But yeah, it's been really, really good. A lot of your listeners, this is really important, obviously, over 90% of cut flowers in the UK are now imported. And we're not talking about supermarkets. We're talking about gas stations, garage forecourts, cafes and restaurants. When you're sitting down to your locally sourced pheasant or whatever you're eating, where's that flower come from that's on your table? Letterbox companies, big companies like Moonpig, Funky Pigeon, those big horrible roses at Valentine's and things like that. It's across the whole of the UK, not just supermarkets. It's over 90% is now imported, and that's not from far-flung countries. Take 5 weeks on a shipping container to get into Holland, then Holland to Great Yarmouth, and then 6 weeks later it's in your house for 5 days, and then it's thrown away. I mean,
for me that is an absolutely staggering statistic, especially at a time when pretty much all other elements of the farming industry generally are red tractor focused, by British, fly the British flag, and yet it seems to me, and I'm probably coming in this very fresh, but that the British flower industry doesn't seem to be along those lines at all.
Okay, so let's just talk about labeling for like 5 seconds, right? So we used to supply all the supermarkets, Waitrose, Marks and Spencer, Lidl. We used to supply all of them. We only supply one now, and we'll talk about the negatives and now the positive that's happened. But basically, there used to be a picture of my uncle and a bit about Crosslands on the packet of flowers, on the plastic wrap on the flower. And then Sainsbury's, they got rid of that. Then they just had the Union Jack in a tiny little top right hand corner.
Okay.
And then 2 or 3 years ago, they got rid of that. And on their labeling, it said grown in Colombia/UK. So to save labeling, to save printer ink, to save someone's job putting a British flag or label there and a Colombian one there, they just lumped us in. It might as well have said grown on planet Earth.
Yeah.
What I'm really telling you now is that labeling has gotten worse for flowers, whereas food, for example, British bacon can no longer be called British bacon. If it was Danish bacon packed in Britain, it would say Danish bacon packed in Britain. When you walk up to the egg shelf, you've really got hardly any battery hen eggs left. You've got barn or free range. When you walk up to the fish counter, you've got your sustainable fish logo. When you walk up to the lamb section, you can either choose New Zealand lamb or British lamb, and obviously you go for the British one. But you've got a choice, you're educated, you've been made aware, and the supermarkets they've had to give people choice because of the Jamies, the Jimmies, the Hugh Fernleys, the number 10s, the people in charge of the country have been pressurized by top chefs, farmers, Country File. It's just got, on TV, it's just got way more publicity. And with flowers, as I say, our labeling is getting worse. So for example, now summer bouquets in supermarkets, it'll say summer bouquet, 10 quid.
That's it.
Not what chemicals are on the because they spray we don't spray any chemicals on our flowers after we've harvested. But on the packaging of foreign flowers, well, you won't even know it's foreign because it won't say where it's come from. But it won't say when it was harvested, where it was harvested, where it was packaged. It won't say any of the chemicals on the flowers. It won't say any chemicals on the packaging because they line chemicals on the packaging to stop the buds opening in transit as well. And again, the plastics, what have they attached to the bunch of flowers on the end of the stems in a supermarket? A plastic sachet of flower food with my bag. need that. So it's sort of the plastics in the ocean, the chemicals, the carbon footprint. None of that is on the label. It's just flowers, £5, roses, £4, alstroemeria, £3. Just the name of the flower and the price, and that's all that Mrs. Smith, Mr. Smith, Joe Bloggs. That's all they've got to work with, and they won't even look at the label because they've not been educated to even look at the label because they're so. It's not their fault. It's just there's no one on TV or in high pro talking about the reality of what the heck's going on and what has gone on for the last 20, 30 years. It's been really, really bad.
So you're a fourth generation, I'm going to say fourth generation farmer, fourth generation grower. What was life like growing up at Crosslands?
Oh, beautiful. Amazing, really. So surfing over there, mountain bike over there. Granddad, even when I was small, would give me 1p and 2p coins for bringing back the troughs of flowers. I'd be putting the flowers and I'd be putting the ties on the bunches and working. And so I've always sort of grown up in the mud, in the dirt. So
yeah. But before you came back to the business, as it were, you had a career elsewhere.
Yeah. So it was a bit random. When I was a teenager, I went to Falmouth in Kernow in Cornwall and did a surfboard making course as like a week-long course.
Pretty cool.
And it was at this marine college where they did HNDs and degrees and marine biology and all of that. And as a teenager, I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want to do this, because when you fill out those forms in high school, it always came up for park ranger for me. Or
yeah.
and it just went on from there. I did a marine science HND back at that college for 2 years. Somehow I got a grade that allowed me to top it up to a Bachelor of Science degree at Plymouth in Devon. And then I was lucky enough just to work around the world doing random stuff for aggregate, oil, gas, wind farm, renewable energy. And I did that for over 10 years. But the reason sort of I was drawn back was there a number of things. You'd put all your hard work into a seabird survey with these rare birds flying across, but they'd still build a wind farm. Or you'd dive down to the bottom of the ocean, you'd find this amazing sea life, but they'd still dredge for oil or dig for aggregate or whatever. Yeah, I enjoyed sort of living around the world and not getting much sleep, but enjoying life. And then I obviously kept one eye on my home, which has always been Crosslands here in Warburton, near Chichester, on the south coast here. And a lot of the greenhouses, big industry greenhouses, they were all being sold for red brick, horrible houses and old caravan sites, storing old buses and taxis. They got more money for that than growing. And so I was sort of drawn back in many ways, the environment side, but also I didn't want to lose my heritage. I mean, 1936, we started with great granddad, and he started out on the LSA, the Land Settlement Association. I don't know if you've heard.
I haven't come across them before. No.
Yes, so the LSA, the Land Settlement Association, basically it was the 1930s, so there was a Great Depression, a lot of miners, a lot of ship builders out of work. There wasn't the benefit system like we have today. You couldn't go down the job centre and get money for free and a house for free. You actually had to go out and work for a living. So the government set up over 20 areas around the UK where the unemployed families would go and work and farm the land. And near me, Chichester, there's a place called Siddlesham. And there was about over 400 small holdings down at Siddlesham. Government bought, so they were all set up by the government. And they're about 4 or 5 acres each, a small holding. And they'd grow all the produce, and that would get sent to Covent Garden. And back then, your Marks and Spencers, your Waitrose, they'd go into Covent Garden, collect all the homegrown produce, and that's how we live. We're very, very sustainable. That is literally how it worked. We farmed and grew stuff, and our people ate it. It was all to get people into work. And my great-grandparents, they came down from Abertillery to Siddlesham in 1936 to take the government up on this sort of incentive. People may have heard of the March to Jarrow and stuff like that. So it was all around this sort of time, the LSA. My great-granddad really got on with it really well. My granddad then joined him after World War II. My granddad met my nan down the road in Pompey, a Pompey girl, and had my aunties and dad at Siddlesham. And then we moved to Warburton, where I am now, in 1957. So as a family business, we've been going since 36. And we've been where I am, stood here since 57. where my dad, uncles and aunties and mum took it over, and now it's me. So yeah, fourth generation.
In the agriculture bill, which is of course going now, I mean, there ain't any reference to your sector in that.
Nope. And I spent more nights than you can believe trying to get something into it.
I
So
can
again,
imagine you did.
someone like me is totally blown out the water. Like, they don't even want to talk to me. Whoever's done that bill, whatever. That's my. I don't understand. It's so rushed. It's not thorough. I mean, I'm heavily dyslexic, and I think people. I'm more of a practical sort of guy. I've always have been. But when it comes to looking at something like the agricultural bill, I spend hours looking at it because it takes me longer to actually process it. And then after I've processed it, I've spent all those hours doing it. I'm like, what a waste of time.
Yeah.
I mean, perfect opportunity to get farmers and growers and flowers and food all together, and let's sort this out, especially now with the pandemic. It's not just Brexit, it's the pandemic. It was the cloud we had. It's all these things that can happen into the future, and what's happened in the past. No one is learning. It's us. It's the farmers and growers that expel all this energy, whereas people in suits at the top getting paid far more than we can dream of, they don't even talk to me. And this so again, this is a great example. So during lockdown, the NFU, you could print out a certificate as a farmer to say that you could be on the roads because you were you were an essential worker, because you're a member of the NFU and all of that. Again, I was left off. Flower growers were left off. I am a member of the NFU. We have been since NFU began, since 1930 to now. Like, we pay all that money for not a lot of stuff. And, we pay, I don't know how much it is, hundreds of pounds. I don't know. It's loads of money. If you add up all the money we've paid in 4 generations, what have we got for all that money? Nothing. As a flower grower, we haven't got anything from the NFU. So to then not be able to download a certificate to say that I can't be on the road to go and drop my flowers off in the village and at wholesalers and the supermarket, I spent a whole week to basically, and at the end of that week, they said, "Oh, just handwrite flower grower on it, and if the police stop, get them to call the NFU." And I thought, no, hang on, that's a bodge job. But again, I'm not blaming other farmers or other growers that aren't involved in the flower industry. This is a problem at the top. Where I don't know where these things happen, but it's almost like flower growers don't even exist, which we very rarely do exist. I mean, there's not many of us left, especially not many youngish ones like me. But there's just another example of getting left behind at the start of lockdown. It doesn't make you feel part of the team, part of the club, and and we go to enough meetings, and I do enough podcasts and social media now to hopefully be slightly recognized, but they still don't care.
Yeah. Let's talk about your campaign stuff and your publicity. When did you start all this, and what were you talking about in those early days, and who were you talking to?
Okay. So I started in 2014. Before I lived on the ranch, or the flower nursery. My friends all call it the ranch for some reason. We do have call it the ranch now. And before I lived on the flower nursery, I lived in the village down the road in a little cottage, and they've obviously got a local flower club, and they have monthly meetings on Bird of Paradise, and Monty Don comes to talk and all this stuff. And I just got fed up of seeing the posters around talking about all this exotic stuff. And I said to them, do you want to talk about something real, about community spirit, about something that the villagers can actually make an impact on into their local environment and tell their kids and the primary school and junior school and all of that? They said, nah, we're happy. We like all talk stuff that's going on around in other parts of the in other countries and things. This is what we do. They're old school. And one month, their speaker they had booked in didn't show up, and I'd obviously give them a bit of paper with my name on, and I got a phone call. I was on my couch, and my phone rang and said, "Oh, Ben, can you come and give your talk?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. When?" They said, "Oh, 20 minutes." So this was back in 2014. No T-shirt, no PowerPoint slides, no videos, nothing. So, and no notes. So I was just as I'm talking to them as I'm talking to you now. And I went in. It was silence because they usually have older age speakers. So in 2014, I would have been in my 20s.
Okay.
And I with the jeans and T-shirt on and trainers, and usually these guys are jacket, suit, tie. But the couch and walked in. I didn't know what to expect. And you got about 100 people there in the village hall or whatever. And go up on stage, you start talking about stuff that we've spoken about on the podcast. And I could see their faces. Some were in shock. Some were nervously laughing like they knew what was happening, but no one had told them to their face.
Yeah.
And at the end, the room was just quiet. It was just, and then one person started clapping, and then they all stood up and started clapping. And then the next day, I got a phone call from Chichester, Portsmouth, Brighton. I got phone calls from all these other clubs. Since then, it's snowballed. So if it hadn't been for that speaker not turning up, but that's still where we are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I still try to get onto country, not me, but I try and get the problem onto Country File. I try and get it on Farmer Time on Radio 4. I even try and get it onto my local radio station at BBC Solent, but you're just seen as, well, he's a young flower grower. What's he got to say, And we're still at that level where if you're not a Z celebrity, then you're not even going to get any form of message out there. And so as soon as that happened, the British Flowers Rock thing was formed. I gave up with DEFRA. I gave up with the NFU. I gave up with the local MP. I just do whatever I can to help my industry because no one else is doing it, basically. And I'm amazed that I've even got talks booked for 2022. So from 2014 to 2022. And the frustration is, well, why do people like me, but then the people at the top don't? And we all know why they don't, because I tell the truth and don't beat around the bush.
Let's talk about alstroemerias themselves. Other than the fact that there's obviously a massive diversity of colour, for you, what is so special about the alstroemeria?
This is the alstroemeria plant. So this is how it arrives at our farm, our nursery, our ranch, whatever we're calling it on the podcast. And they come in these 9-centimetre pots with the tubers and the root system all in the pot with a bit of plant material. It's like Blue Peter. Here's one I made earlier. So this is one of the beds we're replanting now. So as you can see, compared to this bed here, we've hacked down all the old growth. We've taken away the crop supports. The net is raised up to the glass of the roof to expose the bed. We've used a chemical called Basamid, which we've sprinkled onto the soil. We've rotivated that in. That will kill off all the old roots. We've put the polythene over to let the power of the sun go through the polythene and sort of stimulate that sterilization process. This polythene will stay over for about 2 weeks. It will then come off. We'll leave the soil to breathe for a couple of weeks because we don't want to be putting expensive plant material in freshly sterilized soil because they'll just die. So leave it a couple of weeks, and then 135 of these pots of these plants will go into this bed, which is basically over 1,000 pounds a bed just for the plant material. Wow. So you're talking about £1,500, including maintenance on the rotavator, staff, and things like that. And say these bad boys, these guys will go in the ground at the end of August, and then come November time, they'll be as tall as these ones, and we'll start harvesting off through the winter. But it will be spring next year when this will be harvesting thousands of stems from this a day in the spring. And to say, we know it's a good variety. We know we're going to look after it. So the plants will be in there for another 20, 30 years. So that's a bit of info on basically how we plant, when we plant, how expensive it is, and all of that. So hopefully that's a good thing that you guys can all check out. So
is it fairly people heavy? How many people have you got working on the place?
So probably like most farms, we work harder for longer for less money, right?
Of course. Yes. Why would you do any other system?
Yeah, exactly. So this is why we do apprenticeship schemes, and we only have local people that work for us. So we don't hire any agency staff. We just hire good people that believe in the campaign and what we're all about, because as soon as you start employing people that just work for money, it's they start falling asleep in the afternoon because they did hotel work the night
Yeah, I was
before.
going to say, dare I say, if you want to just work for money, don't be working in agriculture or horticulture.
Agency staff. Oh, hang on. Have you gone?
Oh,
I'm
no,
back.
you're back. You're back.
It's telling me to charge my phone. So yeah, when I was a kid, there used to be about 26 people working here. Now there's 6 people working here. So
Yeah, standard story in food and farming, really.
So, and the big difference is in Grandad's latter stages and Dad's early stages, you were inundated. People would walk up. So we've got a big driveway, a big farm gate, nursery gate, and people would queue outside saying, "Mr. Cross, have you got any seasonal work? Have you got any seasonal work?" But now you don't get any what I call walk-ins because they're down the job centre getting free houses and free money. So you've lost, the local community has lost that appetite and desire to work because it's too easy not to work. That's why we should bring back the LSA in terms of, if we've got a lot of unemployed people in our villages, which we have now because of the pandemic, don't just give them furlough money and free money. Why not get them working on farms and nurseries where they can get fitter, get mentally motivated and get a bit of money? And all they have to do is go to the job centre with a certificate saying, "Yeah, Ben Crossy, sign me off. I've done that many hours this week. Here's your money." And that's what the LSA was like in 1936. And yes, it was a bit old. Yes, you could say it was a bit harsh and cold, but it got people out of the slums and into work. And actually, it got people like my granddad owning his own business. So now we have our Kickstarter programs, our crowdfunding programs. Well, that's what Granddad signed up to. That's it sold at the government thing, and the government said, "Well, yeah, if you want to start your own thing, that's what this LSA is all about." And sadly, Margaret Thatcher got rid of that in the 80s or whatever, the old LSA thing, which is a shame because a lot of jobs were lost because of that. Especially things like tomatoes, then we started getting tomatoes from Europe, and we had them fitting through like wooden holes, and if they didn't, they'd get all that stuff came in, and awful times. But so it was 26, now it's 6. But as I say, we do a lot of outreach stuff with horticultural colleges and apprenticeship schemes, and as well as working with sort of local people. We're between 2 junior schools, so we have a lot of mums that want to do something. They want to get fit and get back into work and earn some money, and feel motivated and a bit of stuff in their life because they've had their kid, and now they're like, "What do I do?" They're at school. And with the pandemic, obviously we have got a few people that have walked in and said, "Have you got any work?" And we've said, "Well, yeah, fill your boots." And it's been really good for the local people that we've still been here, because obviously all the cafes, the restaurants, the shops, they've all closed down. So we're one of the very few businesses that are still around our village, and they've built near our village all these new houses where people are living where there's nowhere to work. So, I mean, in a way, the government sort of thank me really, but they don't, do they?
I have to say, it amazes me that the media has not lapped up your story, because it's a great story as well. It's a great story to tell that needs to be told.
Yeah, I've got nothing to lose. I'm a little grower in Warburton doing the best I can. But basically, the supermarkets know as soon as the public find out about this, there'll be uproar, just like there was with the wonky veg and the Hugh Fernie stuff and the Jamie Oliver stuff way before that. It's just it's not given any airtime, So I really do appreciate your time tonight doing the podcast.
No, not at all. It's my pleasure. I mean, in terms of the business side, where do you see your business in a few years, and how are you moving things forward?
Well, you mentioned it at the start of the show that we won the Grower of the Year award last year. That's a national thing. That's the British Florist Association. So we were up against Spanish growers, Italian growers, French growers, Dutch. So for a little grower like me to win that award, again, you should have been in that hall. Their faces just dropped and were like, "Who's Ben? What's he doing? Why are you doing that at the thing?" And then after that, people were coming up to me. I've never, oh, that's really cool. You're doing that. Oh, we need to do that in Holland. We need to do that in Italy. It's not just a British thing. It's like local flowers wherever you are. America, California used to be a big flower hub in California, but they've all been killed off with the cheap Colombian stuff from the south. So it's not just a problem in our country, local flowers and local food. It's wherever you are in the world, you know. So to win that, this year we've been nominated again for that same award, and we've also been nominated for a Sussex Countryside Award. The British Flowers Rock thing has been nominated as a countryside effort, basically, for sustainability. So that's positive news, even going into next year. That, you know, if we can even raise the profile, because it's not about me or the nursery. I don't think I've really mentioned Crosslands once really during this podcast in terms of places that we do what we do. I'm not selling you anything, which a lot of people do, but I'm doing it sort of for the general mix. You know, it had Crosslands, it's British Flowers Rock, and it covers from the small grower to the larger one. So yeah, the future is hard work, but if we can get to do more podcasts, get nominated for bigger things and better things, hopefully people like the government, DEFRA, the NFU will take more notice of the huge problems within our sector, and just sort of not talk about it. You know, we need to start talking about it.
Two final questions, which I ask everyone, they're generally the most difficult ones. If you had one message for the great British public, what would it be and why?
British Flowers Rock.
Fantastic.
There you go. That's the message. That's it.
Brilliant.
And obviously they can follow me on IG and Twitter at alstroemeria Ben, and on Facebook at Crosslands, and you can keep up to date with all the messaging stuff. But yeah. Fantastic.
And a message for farmers and the rest of the agricultural industry.
I would love to meet you all. Please invite me. Let's get together and cause havoc and mayhem. And sorted. Yes. So yeah, basically to other farmers, and think of people like me that are growing flowers, because I think of you guys all the time.
Brilliant. Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure having you on. I mean, I've learned so much. I will definitely look on, when I go into any supermarket, I will look at flowers in a very different way. And and a message to all listeners as well. Please do actually talk about this and start thinking about flowers and start thinking about British flowers, because clearly it's part of our industry, which is somewhat forgotten.
It's Farmer Focus.
There was so much more on that interview, and head over to YouTube if you want to hear the full version of that. Just search for Meet the Farmers podcast on YouTube, Ben Cross. That's it for today's episode, but thank you very much for listening. Thanks also to my guest, Ben Cross, and to the show supporters, the Mercer Family Charitable Foundation. Next time, we're leaving farming to talk forestry with forester Luke Hemmings, who will be on the show. Until then, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.